The next definition is door light, and they have it defined as the provision for glazing material in a door. They spell light, L-I-G-H-T. I can't say that that's wrong, but I would have expected it not to be spelled the same as the word light used in other terms like sunlight. L-I-T-E is what I would have expected. The bottom line is a door light. It's going to be a hole that's cut in a door that is going to allow the transmission, a door, L-I-T-E, will allow the transmission of L-I-G-H-T in a either opaque or transparent sort of fashion, depending on what it's glazed with. And let's take a look at the definition. Before we do that, the material that is going into the door, a door light, I suppose it could be lots of things. Sometimes what you'll have is, obviously the garden variety material. You're going to have a 5x20, a 10x10, whatever size, 3x33, 22x64, and the purpose is to be able to see through the door, whatever the application is. Hallways to stairwells in condo buildings, those are really nice for 5x20s. Something narrow, something taller so that you can see the height of it is nice, because people are generally not on the same plane or the same height off the floor in those applications. 10x10s are really typical, either on a square or on a diamond, half glass, full glass, whatever it might be. There's a lot to think about when it comes to door light cutouts, also in the sense that what do you want to achieve? You want to be able to see through it, or do you want it to be opaque where you can have light come through, as in a borrowed light application where you are just trying to bring some L-I-G-H-T into a space, but you don't want to be able to see into it or see through it. An application for that would be bathroom doors in a restaurant. I've got a restaurant here in town. There are full glass on the men's and women's rooms, and they are ribbed opaque glass. Opaque glass that are ribbed. They just have a decorative texture to them. And many, many years ago, it was pretty fast and loose in terms of what type of glazing was put indoors. The typical was, quarter-inch diamond wire glass. That's all evolved. Wire glass is really not used, is certainly not used nearly as much as it used to be. It used to be what you would have for security or for fire rating. All of that's really gone away. Nor it is neither considered a safety product unless something's done to it, nor is it considered fire rated unless it's approved for that application. In the last 25 years or so, the coming to market of actual fire rated products that act as glass, even though they're not glass, they're ceramic and whatnot, and with differing degrees of opacity, are used in fire rated applications. Really typical for that, you'll have a wall and you'll have a stairwell, or you'll have a stair tower coming down, and then you've got a borrowed light. There is a school that I remember that we did where they're very early 20th century typical Chicago public school construction, right around World War I. You all know, if you're from Chicago, you know the red brick sort of giant epic buildings. Stairwells are coming at either end of long hallways, and they'll have, not then, but now, this one school that we did, very large borrowed light wall that's there, very, very large, and an enormous amount of money spent on fire rated material. Technical Glass Products is a name that's pretty common with that, but they are certainly no longer the only name known for that. Varying degrees of thickness as well as opacity, applications that they can be used. And I had a customer call me about 2 years ago and said, boy, these we've got full glass fire doors, and I didn't supply the doors to the client didn't install the doors. But he says, boy, there's something, he didn't have a lot of experience with fire-rated glass. He says, boy, they're turning all orange. And I'd never heard of that. I says, well, are they outside? Are they getting exposure to ultraviolet? No, they were inside. And he had mentioned something, that it was the cleaning crew that was mentioning it. And I thought about it during our conversation, and I said to him, by any chance, are they because he had heavily mentioned, the cleaning crew mentioned it, and during their weekly trips to, do their job of cleaning, they're saying that it's turning more and more orange in a rough surface. And I said to him, by any chance, are they scrubbing something on the glass itself, like a soft scrub or some sort of abrasive cleaning agent? And it turned out they were. So your glass shouldn't turn orange. There is a company that we used to deal with in Chicago called Torstenson Glass. They're several decades old, if not over 100 years old, and they sell a great variety of glass types. Decorative, obscure, transparent, all sorts of decorative glass. The problem with a lot of that material is it's not safety rated. So for use in doors or windows, the product's got to be safety rated. So you have to think deeply about if the glass you're using is appropriate for the application. A client of yours might want that ribbed glass, and I'll show you Torstenson's website. But if it's not a safety product, there's nothing you can do to make it a safety product. Well, can I add some film to it? Yeah, you can add film to it. Does that make it a rated safety product? It doesn't. Speaking about fire doors, a very, very important aspect is when you're cutting out lights, the manufacturer of the door, let's say it's Algoma, just picking the second name that came to mind, Eggers, whoever you use. It may be different today, but once upon a time, there were two manufacturers of fire core, Georgia Pacific and Weyerhaeuser, I think. You knew the difference because one was extremely heavy. The GP material, that door was really heavy. The Weyerhaeuser was less heavy. So the door manufacturer, the Algoma, is buying their material from the raw product manufacturers, the Weyerhaeuser. Forget Weyerhaeuser as a door manufacturer. Just think of Weyerhaeuser forest products. So someone is making, I don't recall, but there are 5 components in a wood door. You got to have a core. You got to have skins. You got to have stiles and rails. You got to have glue. Maybe there's just 4 components, or maybe it's core, skins, stiles, rails, and glue. That's all you need for a wood door. So when you're in Algoma, you're going to offer fire doors to your clients. You're going to order your core from whoever's making the core, and those cores are generally banded, meaning the stiles and rails are already attached. Then that door manufacturer, Algoma, will have their doors tested for fire rating, meaning how big of a piece of glass can go in there. What type of hardware will the door be prepped for? What I'm driving at is the maximum size and the distance away from a hardware preparation is well defined. You can only get so close to a mortise pocket. Okay, you can only get so small of a stile and a rail. And you have to know that when you're putting lights into fire doors, that you're not falling below that stuff. If you order a door from a manufacturer and it is in violation of that, they'll tell you, oh, something's wrong here. You either have to make it this or that, or move it this and that, change your hardware. The manufacturer of the wood door, Algoma, has a binder. At least that's how it was in the old days. You'd open the binder, and in the binder are the procedures. And the procedures are what that manufacturer has tested for the way that they build doors. In those procedures, it will clearly state minimum top rail, minimum distance away from lock preparation. So that's all in their procedures. So if you need to know how wide of a light you can go with an 86 edge, you'd call your Algoma and you'd say, open up your procedures. What's my maximum width or my minimum stile dimension? And when you're thinking about door lights, as well as louvers, you've got to really think about 3 things. Well, first of all, you have to know what the net size of the glass is. That's just part of the process. You have to know how big of a hole in the door you have. But the complication of how big of the hole that you cut is the outside dimension of the vision frame, or the louver in this case, or whatever it is. Because you could have a standard vision light from Ear Louver, or All Metal Stamping, or National Guard that bought a Nemostat, and other people that you can get vision frames from, direct from the factory as well, whoever they're using or they're making their own. Gulfport Industries makes a version of snap-in kits that would be used for metal doors. You have to make sure that your rows, that your lock pocket, that the return on your lever, none of this conflicts with the size of hole you're intending to cut. I was watching a video from a YouTube friend of mine, and we go back and forth commenting about work, and he was installing a Sargent rim exit alarm device. And the door detailer made a couple of mistakes. They didn't know the job very well. One, they wouldn't really know. It's certainly not published. They had Sargent trim on the outside for this 8000 series. I forget the device. With trim. They were using Schlage rim cylinder full-size interchangeable core housings. The cylinder mounting plate that comes with the Schlage rim cylinder, because they're using full size, is not compatible with the recessed area in the back of the trim. If you have a Sargent housing, that plate works fine. So what this client had to do, and he griped about it, frankly, he had to modify that plate. There was one door. He needed his aviation snips or a grinder, and it took longer to gripe about it than it did to modify the plate. No big deal on one. If there were 30, be a big deal. He had called Sargent, and they offered no solution, which didn't set right with him. But yeah, when you're trying to put a Chevy starter onto a Ford, expect to have to re-drill some stuff, I'd think. I had found a Kaba Ilko cylinder mounting plate that probably would have worked just fine, and let him know about that. So that was the first thing. The second problem that the door detailer really should have picked up is his vision frame outside height actually prevented the client from installing the vision frame perfectly level. He went ahead and drilled the door for his end cap and then got that attached, and he swung his exit device up, and he was not level because he didn't check that. The issue is that vision frame should have been held back up. There's no doubt about that. It should have been off of that by a couple of inches. So you've got to think about, what top rail do you need when you're doing a vision frame? Do you have enough room for a door closer body? What is the door closer body mount? Is it regular arm? Is it parallel arm? Is it top jam? Do you have enough room? I like the Norton catalog for that because they go into exceptional detail. Every application gets its own page. So if you're a beginner, you can use that Norton catalog to really dive in and say, okay, we're doing a parallel arm bracket, and I've got a top rail dimension of X, and it is most certainly something that I have to revisit every single time. I have to think about, do I have enough room to install all of this? And you could certainly use a rule of thumb. You could make everything 8-inch top rail, and you're probably not going to have a problem. But what's the door height? Is it 7.0? Is it 7.2? Is it 8.0? Is it 6.8? So that doesn't really work. So what you've got to really think about is, what are your styles? You kind of want the top rail to be the same. Parallel arm is going to be very different than a top jam mount in terms of that minimum requirement for that. So your door Lite manufacturer will give you the 3 dimensions that you need: order size, and then therefore the glass size, and they'll also give you the outside dimensions so that you can literally lay that out. And however you get there, just get there. You could just pull up a typical drawing program, give yourself a 3070 rectangle, give yourself a second rectangle of the hole in the door, superimpose over it a bigger rectangle, and then you can measure that distance, and you'll know exactly what it can be. Fall back to the Norton catalog, and you'll see exactly what's needed. If you need drop plates, be mindful of drop plates as well, because they don't sit very well over the lip, even of a very low profile metal vision frame. When it comes to exit devices, if you're doing full glass and you're not doing a crossbar, you're going to need a shim kit to build that exit device off the door for that. So door lights are like that. They are something that you have to think about. When it comes to a 5x20 or a 4x25 or a 3x33, I'll do something like a 7.5-inch lock rail, that's going to, or a 7-inch lock style, I should say, not lock rail, lock style. That'll get me far enough over. The cutout will be 7-inch, the trim will fall over 3/4 inch. I'm good. I don't think anyone's really measuring a 1/4 inch. However, you could have someone that's measuring a 1/4 inch, and you don't want to have the hangman's noose of you being off. So double check that stuff, and I always double check it. I probably should have made myself a cheat sheet many, many years ago. I just realized now I really never did. But you do it enough, and then you gotta get confident at it, which overconfidence isn't good, but you do become reliable at doing it correctly. So let's switch to the screen view and let's take a closer look at all of the supporting information. If you are enjoying this video, please click thumbs up or like, and also please consider subscribing to our channel. Let's move on to the rest of the video. Door light, the provision for glazing material in a door. Okay, I don't have any procedures that I can show you. We're not a remachiner of doors, so I don't have a binder available. Let's take a look at a catalog that you may never have seen, or maybe you're really familiar with them. If you're in Wisconsin or Illinois, you probably know All Metal Stamping. Compared to Earlouver, they're a very small company in terms of their footprint of product. But here is a product catalog of theirs, and I'd like to use them because you may never have heard of them, and they're a really good, interesting company. They're really simple, no-nonsense, straightforward people. So that's a neat little wood-wrapped metal vision frame. Probably fire-rated would be my guess. So it's a lot happening there. Obviously what they're doing there is maybe for procedures or for design, whatever it might be. Walnut doors. So All Metal Stamping, they make the regular... they're always going to have the typical types of suspects they're going to make. And, you know, this is a typical, this may be their 110. Yeah, the 110 would be the one that I would always order from them. A low-profile kit, screw through one side into the other side. But when I say that the usual suspects, they'll have the different types of material. The 110B low-profile, this is, I believe, something that they can use to tweak sizes. A handy chart of fire ratings and what's permissible and what's not. A couple of them, actually. 3. This is their hollow metal clip. Yeah, these are nice. It allows you to help keep the door skin from being crushed in. That is interesting. When you're doing a hollow metal door, you're generally going to drill 4 holes on one side of the door. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then jigsaw cut and flip the door over and do the same thing. Drill 4 holes, jigsaw cut, 1/8 inch hole, then 5/16 or 3/8 jigsaw blade. A very short one goes in because you don't want that reciprocating and hitting the opposite side, and you connect the dots. The problem with that then is your door skins are really loose. Depending on the core type, it could be not advantageous. What I like to do, depending on the application, is I'll either have the shop or the factory cut channel and weld channel in there to reinforce these cutouts, because I don't want to compromise the integrity of the door just because we punched a large hole into it. So that's All Metal Stamping's version of giving some rigidity back to the door itself. I don't see that they have a through bolt model. Yeah, they do. Right here, they're 115. You got to be careful with through bolt models. This model is not going to be problematic because you don't have to drill through the door, but sometimes that through bolt hole goes right through the door, and it will end up taking you a lot more time to install a light kit. The advantage of this substantially is, no doubt, over time, the typical 110 light kit is going to creep down. Door opening, door closing, open, open, close, close. Thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of cycles. That's going to creep down a little bit. Well, that through bolt model is going to really work to prevent that, this 105. I don't like them because it's so much more work to do in the shop, but I like them for a client to have and to do that work. If I was specifying on high volume doors, I would want that type. And so on and so forth. There are many different designs that are here, so lots to choose from. And this is just All Metal Stamping, a company, like I said, you may not have heard of. So you could fall back on your Enemostats, your Earlouvers, whoever you would get that material from. The important part is they're giving you the relationship between order size, door cutout size, order size, which is the exposed size. That's the inside dimension of the frame. If you order an 18 by 24, Right here, it's going to be 24. Right here, the exposed. Your cutout size will be 1.5 inches bigger. What they don't give you in this chart is what the OD of the frame is, but you can figure it out because they do indirectly give it to you. You've got order size, you've got cutout size, you've got your glass size. It's nice to know that from your order size, your OD is going to be 3 inches bigger on this model 105M. So you've got to be really mindful of that amount of overlap. So if you order a 24-inch wide, a 24 by 60, 24 by 64, the OD of that kit's going to be 27-inch. 35 3/4 minus 27 is probably smaller than you expected. So be mindful. 22-inch is really the widest I go on a full glass. 20 starts to make sense because now you're at 23-inch. 36 divided by 23, 13 nominally divided by 2 is 6.5. It's really going to be closer to 6 3/8. That's a really good size. So 20 is really good on this model. And then you also want to try to avoid fractional sizes. That's just going to make things more expensive. And like all other manufacturers of metal vision frames, again, there are lots of choices here. So you're probably going to want to dive in and choose the one that's most appropriate. You could also call someone like All Metal and say, what's the common one? And I can tell you it's going to be the 110. So if we were to jump to Earlouver or to National Guard, who now owns the Animastat brand, you'll find the same sort of concepts. Now I had also mentioned Torstenson Glass. I think they're tglass.com maybe? Yeah, right here. Products. Yeah, actually. And Torstenson is in a neat area. I think they're near Belmont and Sheffield. Younger area, not terribly far from Wrigley Field. Difficult to get to if you're driving there in traffic, that's for sure. Really old Chicago neighborhood. 130 years is what they say. So yeah, these people are 19th century. 3233 North Sheffield. Okay, so products. Fire-rated glass. They've got it listed here. If you're doing fire-rated glass in a door, you're just going to order that from your door manufacturer. That's what I would do. I wouldn't. Back in the old days, we would order metal. Back in the old days, people who made metal vision frames didn't supply glass. So we would get our glass from Torstenson, 1/4-inch diamond wire. We would get occasionally 1/4-inch clear temp. When you order tempered glass, you probably need to really think about. When I hover over it, it goes away. But there's a logo that's there. So you're certainly going to want fire-rated glass to have a logo on it that says that to have its label. 1/4-inch or 1/8 inch or 1/4-inch or whatever thickness of clear tempered glass you're using, you need to think about whether or not that needs to have a logo or it does not have a logo. I would always order my glass with logo. But the problem with that is if you're doing a French door, you don't want logos on every single pane. So you need to think about, because that would look awful. So you need to really think about where you're going to have a logo on those applications that may not absolutely require it, because you don't want to get into trouble not being able to prove to somebody that this is a safety product, like tempered glasses, like a windshield on a car. So the logo is really important. Products, flat glass, yeah, you can research this. What I really wanted to show you was bird-safe glass. That's new. What I wanted to show you was their patterned textured glass, because I've used these glass products. I've probably used all of them. The rain pattern, glue chip I've used, obscure wire. Now when it comes to wire glass, diamond you'll hear, but occasionally you're going to hear the word MISCO, M-I-S-C-O. Basically, MISCO is square. When you take that sheet of glass and you rotate it 45 degrees, you now have diamond wire. If you rotate this in your mind's eye 45 degrees clockwise, that's now MISCO wire. So you'll see what comes to mind is mid-20th century buildings built by the military all over the country. You go on those buildings for a door job, it's going to be rotary red oak, and you're going to have MISCO wire everywhere. Antique GNA I've done in windows that we've made. The problem with this stuff is you've got to really, you can offer it to your clients, but you got to find out if it could be technically a safety product. Bullet resistant glass I'm not familiar with. Bird safe glass is new to me. So this could be a decent area to dive deeper into the world of glass. My contact at Torstenson, she's probably long retired, but was Shirley at Torstenson. But like I had said, the real low-hanging fruit, and admittedly, I've spoken to a plant manager at a major manufacturer of metal vision frames and other items. They don't like selling glass. They do it because they have to, because glass is hard to ship. And when I quote a job, I'm quoting it in such a way that I'm planning on that glass going LTL. So when you're doing this sort of work and you pull up a catalog, yeah, right here we go. So this is how I've been buying it for obviously years. I'm going to order the LFRA 100. I'm going to order it with clear temp. And this is my list price based on the size. Options available. So that's why you're not ordering vision frames from one company and glass from another company. It also complicates the shipping aspect of getting stuff to a job site. But there was once upon a time, glass was not included, or wasn't an option. So let's also take a look at a typical technical manual. Been using this DCI technical manual for a while. Let's dive in and see if we can find... Yeah, when I look up the word Lite, L-I-T-E, that's what I'm expecting, really more so to see when it comes to talking about a hole in a door. And door manufacturers are going to have abbreviations, and I'm hoping this manual does, but I'm not seeing them. Actually, I'm sure the Steel Door Institute has standard abbreviations for door lights. Let's go to Seco's catalog. Yeah, so every manufacturer's there's going to be industry standard designations. A 10 by 10 or a 12 by 12, that's going to be a V. That's going to be an HG for half glass, FG for full glass, NL for narrow light. I don't know that there are any hard and fast rules about this, but if you're going to speak in generic terminology, probably just use the generic terminology. As I pull up the Seco 2014 technical manual, I get to a page where F for flush, V, N, I would call it NL, but and you get it. G2, G, I would call it HG, but I think as long as you're descriptive with what you want, I don't end up using a letter designation for that, but when you see HG, you can probably assume it's half glass. So that's handy to be able to see what those look like as well. So that sums up pretty much everything I can think of about door lights. Door opening, the area in a frame product in which we'll talk about your door opening. Let's do that next. Thank you for watching, and if you've enjoyed this video, please click thumbs up. Please subscribe and maybe even send the video to someone that you know. Thank you.